They called it a holy war, a divine mission, a march ordained by God himself. Tens of thousands answered the call. Kings, knights, peasants, thieves, even children, believing they were chosen to reclaim the Holy Land from the hands of the unbelievers. But what began in fire and faith ended in blood and silence. Because hidden beneath the glory of conquest, beneath the hymns and the relics and the golden crosses, there was something else. A shadow, a warning, a curse. This is the forgotten story of how the First Crusade did not end in triumph, but in something much darker, something that still echoes in the bones of Jerusalem. It began in 1095, when Pope Urban II addressed the crowd at Clermont. His voice thundered over the assembly, "Deus vult! God wills it." The Holy Sepulchre, he said, had been desecrated. Christian pilgrims were being slaughtered. It was the duty of every man of Christ to take up arms and march east. But what the Pope did not say, what he could not say, was that this crusade was not only about land or faith. It was also about silence, about burying a secret. As the Crusaders marched, they encountered famine, betrayal, desertion, and death. Cities were razed. Innocents were killed. Yet they pressed on, as if driven by something deeper than orders or righteousness, as if under a spell. When they finally reached Jerusalem in 1099, they were no longer an army of men. They were something else. Starving, bloodthirsty, delirious. And then, the massacre. On July 15th, the Crusaders stormed the walls of Jerusalem. What followed was one of the most brutal slaughters in history. Christians from Europe killed not only Muslims and Jews, but even fellow Christians of Eastern rites. The streets ran with blood. Chroniclers wrote that in the Temple of Solomon, blood reached the knees of the horses. It was not a battle. It was a ritual. But something strange happened in the aftermath. Amid the celebration, amid the bloodshed and looting, a group of knights, men who would later become the core of the Templar order, disappeared beneath the city, into the crypts, into the tunnels. For 3 days they did not emerge. And when they did, they were different. They spoke little. Their faces were pale. Their commander, Raymond of Toulouse, refused to enter the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. He claimed he had seen not God's glory, but his warning. That night, he wept alone in the Mount of Olives. What did they see? There are whispers, fragments of lost manuscripts. One, hidden in the Vatican and only revealed after World War II, speaks of an artifact unearthed beneath the old foundations of the Temple Mount. A stone, black as night, humming with heat. It bore inscriptions in no known language, and at its center an eye, not carved but grown organic, watching. The Templars called it the Witness. According to the same manuscript, the stone revealed visions, horrors beyond time, cities in flames, oceans swallowing continents, the screams of angels bound in chains, and at the center, a voice not in words but in knowing, a truth so terrible that men forgot how to speak after hearing it. It was not a holy relic. It was a curse. The stone was sealed again, deep beneath the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, not destroyed because it could not be destroyed, only buried, forgotten, suppressed beneath layers of faith, blood, and time. And then, the madness began. Godfrey of Bouillon, first ruler of the new kingdom of Jerusalem, refused the title of king. He called himself Advocatus Sancti Sepulchri, protector of the Holy Sepulchre. But in private letters, he wrote of the burning light beneath the floor and the whispering walls that speak in dreams. He died 1 year later under mysterious conditions. Some say he walked barefoot into the desert, speaking in tongues. His body was never found. Bohemond of Taranto fled to Antioch. Raymond of Toulouse refused to stay in the city. Baldwin took the throne, but within months, reported illness, paranoia, and visions. He began exiling his own men, accusing them of heresy and demon worship. The church celebrated. Christendom cheered. The Holy Land was liberated. But those who touched Jerusalem never returned the same. And then came the plague, not the Black Death of the 14th century. but a strange, localized illness in the years after the First Crusade. Described as the curse of the pilgrims, it struck only those who had entered Jerusalem during the siege. Their skin turned black, their eyes swelled, they spoke in a strange language before dying. The church called it divine punishment for sin, but local monks recorded a different theory. They called it the breath of the stone. By 1105, half the original Crusader force was dead. Not in battle, but in silence. Their names forgotten, their graves unmarked. So why, then, was this not recorded in our history books? Why did the church celebrate the First Crusade as a triumph? Because to speak of the curse was to give it power. The few who survived and remembered formed secret orders. The Templars, the Hospitallers, the Order of the Holy Sepulchre. They did not exist to protect relics, but to protect us from the truth. They guarded the sacred places not as sites of worship, but as prisons. Prisons for knowledge, for memory, for what they found beneath the stone. Over the centuries, efforts were made to breach the chamber. The Mongols tried. The Mamluks failed. Napoleon, it said, sought the vault beneath the sepulchre but was stopped by his own men, who reported hearing screaming rocks in the desert. Even Hitler sent occult teams to Jerusalem in 1938. They disappeared without a trace. But the curse never left. To this day, those who enter the crypts of Jerusalem speak of the cold. A cold that is not of wind or stone, but of presence. The sense that something watches, remembers, waits. Modern scans in 1999 revealed a cavity beneath the sepulchre that matches the dimensions described in 12th century Templar maps. The Vatican denied access. The Orthodox Patriarchate dismissed the findings. The Franciscans refused to comment. But there is one final piece to this puzzle. In 2022, an amateur historian named Jacob Meyer published a private letter found in the ruins of an old Crusader outpost in Acre. It was addressed to Pope Paschal II. The letter claimed that the First Crusade did not end in glory, but in containment. That we did not liberate Jerusalem, we locked it. And that if the seal ever breaks, the fire will speak again. What fire? What voice? What did they find that terrified them more than death itself? Perhaps the curse of the First Crusade was not a punishment. Perhaps it was a warning, a mirror held up to mankind's darkest hunger, not for God, but for power disguised as faith. The men who marched to Jerusalem believed they were the sword of heaven. But in the end, they became its silence. They won the war. They built the kingdom. But deep beneath the holy stones, they left behind a curse. And maybe, still there, waiting, listening, remembering.